Hello, everyone. Welcome back to episode 13 of What You Need to Know About Boxing. I'm your host, Phil X Fights, otherwise known as Philip, and good to be back. Had a pretty productive birthday, 23 years of age now, feeling good, feeling young, and feeling ready to talk about everything that happened this past weekend in boxing and look forward to the weekend ahead. So let's get right into it with our little workout here to start off the show. This is hitting the bag. So, first topic on hitting the bag here, pretty big one. I missed this topic. I would have covered it last week, but it was made officially official just following my last upload. And that, of course, is the gigantic news that CANELO CRAWFORD is now official. As we can see from the poster here, it's official. So there was going to be a lot of discussion over who's promoting the show, where will it be, and we have most of those answers now. So if we look at the bottom of the poster here, we of course see Canelo Alvarez Promotions, Ring Magazine, Sela, which is the Saudi Arabian investment fund, or at least that's how I understand it. And then we have those three letters, TKO. That, of course, is the overall large financial group which owns the WWE and the UFC, which means that Dana White is officially involved with the promotion. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes rumblings of if Dana White could work with Turki Al-Sheikh, if they were having an amicable relationship, or if there was some serious backlash. Of course, this is happening Saturday 13th, according to what is most updated. I don't know yet if we have an official venue. I know on this poster that they released that they just put the date in Las Vegas, but I'm curious if there is a venue. The Allegiant Stadium. Okay. So it looks like Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, which I think originally had another event scheduled at that time, but they were able to have them move somewhere else, which goes to show that they think that this is going to be a mega event. At least what a boxing event can be at the upper echelon, because I don't really think beyond a Jake Paul, Mike Tyson that boxing really has that many mega events. Just possible due to the nature of how popular the sport is, how public it is in the overall eye of everyday people. But it's going to be live on Netflix. It's going to be promoted by Dana White and TKO, which have all kinds of money. Sela, Ring Magazine, Turki Al-Sheikh have all kinds of money. And as I sit here, let's see, it's June, what is this, the 19th? No, excuse me, it's the 16th. We're just over, let's see, June to July, July to August, August, September. We're what, 3 months out? July, August, September, yeah. So there better be a lot of promotional work done from now until that card, because you have to have this be a mega success. You can't, if it comes back that the live Netflix viewers were 30 million, 40 million, I honestly think that that's a failure. I think you need this thing to be upwards of 60 million. I think Amanda Serrano versus Katie Taylor 2 came in at 80 million concurrent viewers. Now, of course, that's because they were leading into the Jake Paul fight, but still, I think if a Jake Paul Mike Tyson undercard can get that figure on Netflix, you have to be hoping for the 50 million range. You want this to be a super event. I don't know how ticket sales are going to do. To be quite frank, it seems like Riyadh season events tend to underwhelm in terms of ticket sales. I haven't seen a lot of convincing evidence that wherever Riyadh season or Sela goes, ticket sales follow. You know, I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to have this be a coveted event where Hall of Famers and A-list celebrities are lining up in the front row. I'm just not so sure of that. I mean, I think I have good reason to be pessimistic, but I also hold out that optimism that I think I always have. I mean, there's not too much else really to say. We're going to have to see how the undercard looks. We're going to have to see how Terrence Crawford looks, moving up effectively 2 weight classes. But honestly, the way that Canelo Alvarez has looked recently, I think the fight from a competitive standpoint has never been more attractive. Because who knows what this version of Canelo has left. Genuinely, I thought he looked horrific against School. He didn't look too much better against his other, Edgar Berlanga had basically no resistance. Jaime Munguia, that whole run has just not been confidence inspiring. Where Terrence Crawford is 2 fights removed from Errol Spence, which is a all-time prolific performance. I understand at a much lower weight, but it's interesting. It's interesting. I used to count out Crawford a lot more than I am now, which is basically a referendum on Alvarez. But there's no denying it's a huge fight. All eyes should be on it. Apparently, Turki Sheikh said that he doesn't want the undercard to be loaded with big names. He also put out some other sort of tweet that he doesn't want fighters to be having fights that are like Tom and Jerry where someone runs. So maybe the undercard is just going to be Isaac Cruz versus who's he? Angel Fierro kind of fights where they just find action fighters. They just try to make this completely appeal to the casual fans. I think that's maybe your best strategy, because what's the point of putting big-ish names on the undercard? If there was a Jai Apataya or trying to think of mid-range names that feasibly you could put, but it's like, what's the point? People are going to go there because they want to see Canelo Crawford. They're not going there because of how good the undercard is. That's not what this kind of fight is. So, not too much else really to say at this moment, but you got to cover it. It's one of the biggest fights that you can make in the sport. So hopefully it does well. But also, let's move on here, hitting the bag once more. Let's talk about a little bit of BoxRec drama, which basically is a story as of a few hours ago, but it does pique my interest, and it does bring up some very interesting logical questions. So, Naji Chill put out on his Twitter page that he doesn't like to use BoxRec, which is the website that is basically the most complete archive of boxing information. It holds which fights are happening, what are the results. Let me find his exact words here on BoxRec. BoxRec is trash now. They don't be showing the dates and all the info like they used to. I use Topology now. They better than BoxRec. Okay. So, that's the catalyst for this event. That's the take in question. And I wholeheartedly disagree. Now, not sponsored by BoxRec. I have no allegiance to any one website. But if you are going to sit here and tell me that Topology is a better resource than BoxRec to study boxing events, to study who is fighting on undercards, to learn about specific moments that occurred during a fight, as in which rounds knockdowns were scored, how were the judges scoring the fight round by round, any of that information is readily available for free on BoxRec. It just is. On Topology, it is not. I can go further than this. Large numbers of complaints in the comments under that tweet are referring to you can't see the results of fights, you can't see certain information. All of that information that they claim is no longer available is behind the very, very simple, utterly simple gesture of you make an account with the website. You just use a Gmail account. You make a free to use account, and you can see in what round the fight was won, at what time, which judges scored which rounds which way. You have all of that information at your fingertips for nothing. for, clicking off a few ads every now and again. There is just no way that if you are seriously looking into upcoming boxing events, that there is a secondary site as good as BoxRec. There just is not. Like, every week when I'm preparing for this show, I scour through hours and hours of BoxRec pages, looking at who people fought, getting a quick glance of, who was fighting on their undercard and what were the records of their opposition at the time. This is not easily found on Tapology, which is by and large an MMA website. They don't even have all of the boxing events. Now, Boxer Gray, beloved Twitter user and boxing person who is a cool guy, put out that apparently he believes that that maybe there was a financial incentive for putting out this tweet, but he also put out that it's pretty clear to him, based on the website's inner workings, that Tapology consistently scrapes information from BoxRec and transports it to their site, which is de facto stealing, but also just goes to show that even Tapology doesn't think it's the better website. If it thought it was the better website with better record keeping, why would it skim and take the information from another site? It's because BoxRec is the best site. So I really don't want to hear it. If you think that it's too much of a commitment to sign in with your email account to get this information, then you are just lazy. That is the long and short of it. You are just lazy. You don't want to use a website in the manner in which they're asking you to, and you think that providing a login is too much work to get hours and hours, hundreds of thousands of hours of people updating the site, of spending time making sure that things are accurate, updating fighters based on new drug test findings, new suspensions, medical suspensions. If you think that all of that is not worth an email login, I don't know what to tell you. So that's my little piece there on BoxRec drama. Let's hit the bag a little further here. Let's work on some uppercuts and get into this. So I had briefly mentioned a card happening this past weekend that featured Andrew Tabiti. It featured O'Hara Davies, Brandon Glanton. It was promoted by Amir Khan. And there was all this promotion. Oh, there's this boxing card that's happening in Ghana. It's going to be free on DAZN. It was even going to be free on YouTube. This card, I have tried to find the results, and I tried to watch it live. I have no idea what happened. No idea. About 2.5-ish hours into the broadcast, the feed just cuts out. Another thing was, now maybe this is the event was catered to a more local audience, but there was about 20 to 30 minute breaks in between each fight, and I wish that was a joke. They would have a fight, this undercard people that I can't be bothered to remember, and then there was 10 minutes of music, and then 10 minutes of dancing, and then the camera would show shots of the crowd, and they're up in a roar and dancing and partying. And I'm thinking to myself, am I looking at the right feed here? Is this actually what I'm supposed to be watching? Where is the boxing? And then by the time that the boxing fights actually happened, the feed just cut out. So based on what I could gather from the respective fighters' Instagrams, Andrew Tabiti won his fight. O'Hara Davies won his fight. Brandon Glanton, I have absolutely no idea. And the rest of the undercard, who knows? Even the BoxRec page itself is completely blank with yellow question marks. So, who knows? Did it ever happen? Maybe the real Ghana boxing card was the friends we made along the way. I genuinely don't know. But, yeah. So, I don't get to say if my predictions were right or wrong because they've just vanished into the ether. I don't know. And then finally, let's hit the bag a little bit more and talk about Edwin De Los Santos again. So Edwin De Los Santos, of course, that entire tirade I had on the last episode about how Keyshawn Davis acted very inappropriately, unprofessionally, De Los Santos getting screwed over. Well, him and Samson Lukovich had split ways, and it's very interesting to me because it tells you a lot about what happened in those negotiations. What it seems like from reporting that's come out, which again has been a little bit all over the place, it seems as though De Los Santos wanted to fight Keyshawn Davis no matter what, despite the almost 4-pound weight miss. And Samson Lukowicz basically made it so that De Los Santos wasn't going to go through with the fight. They paid De Los Santos. Now, I heard originally person full, but then another figure was reported that does not seem like person full. So I think it's actually show person full, and he may have stood to make more money if he had won. Again, not clear on that because for some reason there's hushed tones over what happened with De Los Santos and Samson Lukowicz. De Los Santos is maybe going to sign with Jay Prince, but then there are other people saying that no, that's absolutely not the case. So I think the smoke is going to clear eventually. This isn't even that big of a story that we have to not report on accurate proceedings here. But I figured I'd mention it because it's just another further fallout from that entire debacle last weekend. All right, let's get into the fights themselves. Let's go over some breakdowns. And let's talk about this past card over the weekend. So my predictions were as followed. I had Hitchins winning by TKO in the 9th round. I thought that Andy Cruz was going to win by knockout in the 7th round. And then it's sort of a, pointless even thing to bring up, but I was going to pick Tito Mercado to win by knockout. That, of course, is irrelevant because his opponent pulled out with a sickness, I believe. All right. So let's get into it. Richardson Hitchins picks up an 8th round TKO win over Jr Kambosos. I wanted to put the purple there so bad because in case you're maybe a newer viewer or you may have forgot, again, no problem there. But if my predictions are in purple, that means I got it completely accurately to the round. 1 round off, but this fight went exactly as I called. I had people saying that it was surprising that Hitchins won by knockout, that they didn't see that coming. I thought this was the most obvious pick I've had in a very, very long time. The second that Lomachenko was able to knock out Kambosos to the body, you mean to tell me that every next Kambosos opponent won't look at that and go, oh, great, I have an area where he's weak to. And you don't take body shots better later in life. You only take them worse. So that's what Hitchins did. Hitchins basically didn't get hit with a single punch, which was a concern of mine because I said, I don't know if I made the joke last show that I think I wanted to say something akin to for every punch that Hitchins gets hit by Kambosos, he should lose like $3,000 off of his fight purse. Because again, I thought this was a mismatch. Turned out to be a mismatch, Everyone wanted to say, oh, but Kambosos beat Teofimo Lopez. I mean, that in hindsight is one of the worst losses in 20 years. Like, I don't like hyperbole. I don't like living in the moment, but it is incredible just how not elite George Kambosos is. Went from beating Teofimo Lopez by split decision when we find out that Lopez, his esophagus had collapsed and whatnot, goes on to fight Devin Haney, gets washed twice in a row, then fights, of course, oh goodness, don't let me forget his name, goes on to fight Maxie Hughes, pretty clearly loses that fight 117-111, but wins a crazy decision there. Then goes on to fight Vasily Lomachenko, gets stopped, fights late replacement Jake Wiley and has a war that he is able to win. He's just not elite. I don't know why we had to spend months. I don't know why Kambosos had to sign with Keith Connolly, have a co-deal with Matchroom, all of this stuff to build up this fight, when it was so obvious. It was so obvious that this was never going to be a real fight. It was so obvious that Hitchins was going to dominate and find a stoppage. so obvious. It just feels like a gigantic waste of time when you have a division like 140 pounds, full of champions, full of interesting contenders. You know, George Kambosos gets a title shot before, oh goodness, I keep thinking Andy Cruz because now he's on. Oh my god, that is so annoying. Hiroka, right? Andy Hiroka. Da 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 da. Yeah, I mean, it is just so unfortunate that George Kambosos is getting all of these opportunities when there are plenty of fighters that actually would have had a real chance in there that Saturday against Hitchins. But hey, Hitchins moves on. He calls out Devin Haney, which, are you really going to give up your world title to fight Haney at 147? Because Haney's not coming down to 140, I could tell you that. Teofimo Lopez was there. That's, of course, a unification that is seemingly possible. They're both with the same manager, Keith Connolly, at least last I checked. That would be a good fight. But again, Teofimo Lopez seems to be allergic to unifications and would much rather call out Boots Ennis or Terrence Crawford. And, you know, I'm sure he's going to call out Usyk next. I don't know. I thought he wanted the Hitchins fight. When the Kambosos fight wasn't scheduled, there was rumblings. Oh, yeah, Hitchins, Kambosos. Then that fell away. Maybe that was because Teofimo Lopez had to deal with Arnold Barbosa, who was a mandatory challenger, and he didn't want to take a unification bout where he'll essentially just be stripped right away by the WPO. Maybe that's what happened. I hope so. I hope that they can make Teofimo Lopez, Richardson Hitchins next. Leave Haney to go on and do whatever he wants to do at 147. Maybe Rolly Romero. I don't think so, but good performance by Hitchins. I mean, he did what he was supposed to do, but like I said on Twitter, I literally rate this win a 1 out of 10 because it just told me nothing about Hitchins. Nothing. But hey, got the win, you move on. Speaking of mismatches, let's get to the co-main event here. So I had Cruz winning by 7th round stoppage. Of course, he has to go ahead and win by 5th round stoppage. But ever so close. Yeah, it turns out that this character here, Hironori Mishiro, is pretty abysmal. I wasn't expecting much from him. I figured that Andy Cruz is just, too good, too solid of a competitor already. But Mishiro did himself absolutely zero favors. I thought he put on a pitiful performance, if I'm being quite blunt here. I didn't think he looked good whatsoever. He has a weird stance where his legs are wide, yet his torso is upright, and he holds his guard out like this. He was getting jabbed in the face all night. Right hands. Oh, the amount of right hands that Andy Cruz landed. If someone said to me, Philip, would you rather have $1 million or you have $10, but every single time Andy Cruz lands a right hand in this fight, it gets doubled? I pick the second option 100,000 times because, I don't know how much money I'd have, but it would be well over $1 million. Well over. He landed so many right hands. I don't even know why I came up with that weird analogy, but hey, it is what it is. I'm going off the top here, like I always do. But yeah, what a mismatch. What a terrible fight. This whole card was just full of wow, the Matchroom fighter beat the opponent. And you can say, oh, but this was an IBF title eliminator. Doesn't that mean it was good? No. Arguably, honestly, let's go to Andy Cruz. Let's go to his resume. Hironori Mishiro is not better than his last opponent, Omar Salcido. Absolutely not. Salcido was coming off a knockout win over Chris Colbert. He's not better than Antonio Moran, who is a very respectable fighter. I don't think he's better than Brian Rodriguez. I don't even think he's better than Giovanni Strafon. I don't even know if he's better than Juan Carlos Burgos. It is arguable that Andy Cruz, in his IBF world title elimination fight, the next one's for a world title, that was his worst opponent. It is very arguable. I think you can make that case. Mishiro had a terrible performance. But hey, He's mandatory now for Raymond Murataya. It's a mandatory fight, so by any means necessary, that fight should be made. I don't think Murataya is in the position financially where he's going to vacate the title to avoid Andy Cruz. So I think that'll happen next, and that'll be a good fight because that'll be the first real... it's not... I don't want to say that's the first real test for either man because that's not quite right. I think they're both pretty well battle-tested. I mean, at least Raymond Murataya, when he had to fight Zouar Abdullayev, that was a real, contender versus contender bout, where this was not. But Murataya has the chance to basically steal all of Andy Cruz's hype, right? If you beat him, and Andy Cruz has this sort of aura of, oh, of course he'll be champion, of course. Have you seen him in the amateurs? If Murataya can win and win impressively, all of a sudden now you have to really start respecting him. It's a good fight, and I'm looking forward to it. It's a quality champion versus mandatory challenger fight when that's not a guarantee. The undercard was what it was. I mean, Tara Moana, he did his thing, first round knockout. Everyone else, did their job. So what else can you really say? Now, this would be around the time in the show where I would have the Who's That Fighter segment, and I'm just going to have a brief aside and say nobody deserved it. Nobody deserved it this week. Nobody on this card was impressive. I was watching regional shows. Nobody deserved it there. The show in Ghana is, gone to the ethereal broadcasting gods. Who knows what happened with that? So nobody gets a shout out. Yeah, nobody was really that impressive. Sorry, just how it was. Let's move on here. Let's talk about the two living legends that also fought this past weekend. Juan Francisco Estrada, he took on Karim Arce, and Estrada looked very good, very good. There was a lot of discourse on, oh, well, Bam only beat Estrada because of how old Estrada is, and I was sort of believing that. I was like, yeah, you know what it was? Estrada just too old. If he was younger, I don't know. He looked really good against Karim Arce. Now, Arce is no world beater. There are going to be tougher challenges for Estrada, but I thought he looked really good. The main thing I was looking for, can Estrada still let his hands go? And he did. He was throwing in combination. He was throwing in the pocket. He was throwing excellent counter shots. I know he won by unanimous decision, but they could have even stopped that fight. If I'm being quite honest, they could have. Arce got knocked down hard, and I didn't like how he looked on his feet. Very good performance by El Gallo. Very good. I enjoyed that performance, and I look forward to his next fight. I think he still has a lot to give the game. This was a rejuvenating comeback bout. No complaints there. Very fun watch. Very good performance. Now, moving on here to the Filipino Flash, what a debacle this was. So, first things first, Donaire looked about 2 weight classes bigger than Campos. That's just how it is. I mean, Donaire has always been a gigantic bantamweight. He's only gotten older, which means you sort of get bigger. You don't necessarily get smaller. But in the first few rounds, it looked like Donaire was going to knock out Campos relatively easily. As the fight settled in, Donaire, I don't know if it was really gassing or just slowing. Campos was able to find success in spots, and the fight goes down in the books as a technical decision because of a head clash that was taken by Donaire, meaning he was the one suffering from the head clash. They went to the scorecards, and Donaire was awarded the win and the WBA interim bantamweight title. So that puts him back in title conversation. That means that he's next in line to fight, oh goodness, who he was just promoted, right? Hold on, WBA bantamweight champion. It's the guy that just signed to Antonio Vargas, right? He just signed with Matchroom. I think if you're Matchroom, you definitely want that fight. You're definitely going to want Vargas to fight Donaire. I think the only problem is Vargas has a fight, I believe. Let's see here. I believe... I could be wrong, but I think they announced, yep, he's fighting Daigo Higa on a very good triple header, by the way. I guess I could spend a couple seconds talking about this. I'll break it down more in the future, but yeah, Kenshiro Taraji taking on Ricardo Sandoval. I mean, I think Taraji will win by knockout there. Then you have Antonio Vargas versus Daigo Higa. I presume Donaire would get the winner of that. And Eric Mini Pacman Rosa versus Kyosuke Takami. Very good triple header. We'll be looking forward to that. Hopefully, it's done in congruence with ESPN, because that just makes those Japanese shows a lot easier for me to watch over here in the States. But yeah, Donaire, Campos, very dirty, messy fight that ended in a very anticlimactic way. Let's move on here. Let's get into what's coming up this weekend. And speaking of Japanese boxing, Brian Norman Jr. is taking on Jin Sasaki for the WBO welterweight title. This is the fight to watch this weekend. It is happening this Thursday, which is, right around the corner here. I think this is going to be an excellent fight. I don't see how this is a bad fight. I think here are the two most likely outcomes. Brian Norman Jr. by knockout, Jin Sasaki by knockout. I think that is 1A, 1B most likely outcomes. I don't see really either man winning by a decision. Jin Sasaki, very explosive, very fast twitch. I've been enjoying watching him on these Japanese undercards. But my main problem is that he's not facing the best of competition. Typically a lot of these Japanese prospects, they match him up pretty tough. I mean, he had, of course, that prospect v prospect fight against Andy Hiroka. But beyond that, I mean, if I really go down his resume here, coming off of that win over Shoki Sakai, all right. He beat Joey Nonai, which is an all right name. But Keita Obara, Hiroti Hoshi, I just don't know how much to put into these wins. Camille Bala, do any of those names really ring a bell? Do you put confidence in any of that? And Brian Norman Jr. is coming off of destroying Derek Cuevas, which I was not expecting a destruction. I thought that was going to be a shootout. And him putting on a beating on Giovanni Santillan. I mean, it's just two different levels of competition. Not to mention, I think Brian Norman Jr. is going to be way bigger than Jin Sasaki. I don't think that they are similarly sized human beings. Sasaki used to fight, I believe, at 140 pounds before moving up because of a weight miss. Whereas Brian Norman Jr., I could see him at 154. I could see him at 160, provided he has continued career success. So give me Norman to win by 8th round knockout, and what I suspect will be nothing but an excellent fight. Also on the undercard, Christian Araneta is taking on Thangnasak Simsri. Had to look into both these guys because off the top of my head, the names didn't ring a bell, but I've seen both of them fight before. I've seen Christian Araneta versus Sivanati Nanshinga, and I did watch Thanoksan Simsri versus Masamichi Yabuki. I went back, I looked at some of their performances, tried to refresh myself on where they're at level-wise, and I think I have to lean towards the Filipino Araneta to win by late rounds knockout, maybe a decision. I think this is a very evenly matched fight. I do. Because Simsuri got knocked out by Yabuki. Araneta was almost going to stop Nanshinga late. It's a very similar level, I think. But I just noticed that Simsuri is a little bit way too raw. He has a lot of good aggressive ideas. He commits a lot of power to his shots. I mean, if you just look at his record here, 38-1, I believe 34 knockouts. Yep, 34 knockouts. That is a massive KO rate. But it's one of those spots where he's a Thai fighter. They fight a lot of debutantes and one-on-one guys just to stay busy, stay active. And I think Araneta has been through the bigger tests. And at 30 years of age, where Simsri at 24, that does make me nervous. Of course, age is not a benefit the lower in weight you go. But something tells me Araneta will be too good. I think Simsri, maybe he'll get an early rounds knockdown. Maybe he'll hurt Araneta. But I think Araneta will win. I think so. But this is, again, nothing I'm claiming expertise in. I think it will be a great fight, though. I mean, I'm saying TKO on the 10th, but I think that'll be Araneta gets dropped, then Simsri comes back. I think it'll be a good match. I do. I predict they're at similar levels. Also on this card, Yuya Oku is taking on Rhea Abe for the Japanese featherweight title. Rhea Abe, the genius. I watched him fight live in Verona, New York, when he was the mandatory for then champion Venado Lopez. And I'm going to go out on a whim. Maybe it's just because I like him. But I'm going to pick Abe by UD. This guy, Yuya Oku, 8-0-2. But I don't like the two people that he has draws against. And I think Abe is by far and away the best fighter that Oku has fought before. But again, I'm claiming no expertise. This is more of I watched Rhea Abe fight once in person, so I'm sort of rooting for him to capture a Japanese title here. But should be a good card overall. Let's get into another interesting event happening this weekend, brought to you by Matchroom, and that is Galal Yafai taking on Hitchins Rodriguez. This is a very good fight. Very good. Now, typically, you look at the record of Francisco Rodriguez, 39-6-1, and you go, all right, well, writing's on the wall. This can't be a good fight. No. Just 1 second here. Hitchins Rodriguez, in his 6 losses, has only been stopped once. He took Junto Nakatani to a decision. He took Kazuto Ioka to a very close decision. He has some other big names here. Johnny Nietis. He also has Roman Gonzalez is the only man to ever stop him. Chocolatito. That's it. This man is very good. And he is so good, in fact. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this on the fly here. You know what? I think the only way I can do it is on my phone. Let me see if I can do this, and I'll try to hold it up to the camera here. Let me see. All right, I'm going to spend like 5 minutes on this. Or not 5 minutes. What am I talking about? Oh, come on. I should have prepared this beforehand, but I forgot I ever even tweeted about this. Because I think I was going through BoxRec on something else, and I tweeted about how underrated he is. I think it would be really cool for that to come full circle. All right, if I find it, I'll repost it on my Twitter account. But, yeah, very, very good fighter in Francisco Rodriguez here. I'm looking forward to this. I think this will be a very stiff test for Galal Yafai. I do. But at the same time, his last performance against Sonny Edwards was so good. I'm going to pick him to win a competitive decision here. 117-111. You have to respect how consistently durable Francisco Rodriguez is. And if Galal stops him, I will back him to win a world title. I think this is an excellent barometer. Also on this card, a personal favorite of mine, Conor Walker is back against, I believe, his mandatory challenger for the British title, Liam Taylor. Look, I understand Liam Taylor is 28-2-1, but I didn't think he looked very good at all in his last fight. I understand it was a comeback fight to stay active before getting this opportunity. But Conor Walker had just showed so much heart and grit over his win against Harry Scarf last time out. I still think that he beat Lewis Crocker. I think he's very underrated. I've been singing his praises for a long time now. When I picked him to beat Lewis Crocker, everyone told me I'm crazy. Conor Walker is nothing but a journeyman. Now he's British champion, so sometimes I can see into the future a little bit. And I think Walker's going to continue this run he's been on. 7th round knockout. Liam Taylor is the exact kind of fighter Conor Walker loves to beat up on, which are slower, bigger, lankier men. I think Walker's going to get into his chest, throw huge hooks, and find a way to stop him in 7. Also on this card, Peter McGrail is taking on Ionut Baluta, who is just on such a great run right now, that being Baluta, the Romanian super bantamweight, takes on all comers. He's constantly beating British prospects as a massive underdog. I'd love to pick him here. I do think this will be a competitive fight, but I just don't see them giving it to Baluta again. He gets so many favorable decisions. Maybe it's something about his style, but give me Peter McGrail to win by decision. I still don't think, by the way, that McGrail won his last fight. I thought he lost against Reese Edwards, so maybe this comes back to bite me and I should have gone with Baluta, but I'll pick McGrail. Also on the undercard, and now, before I even announce anything, yes, what I'm about to say is pure favoritism, and I don't care. Hamza Uddin is on the undercard. He's back. A very fun prospect, someone that I've been looking forward to watching on these Matchroom shows. Now, you might say, well, Philip, is this just because he follows you on your Twitter page that you're going to give him a shout out here? I won't admit that. But what I will say is I think he's quite good. You know, there's other prospects on here like Aaron Bowen, Giorgio Vizioli. They're not that impressive to me, honestly. I mean, Pat Brown, he's back again on this undercard. But Hamza Uddin taking on the guy with a record of 6-1-2 when you're just a 4-0 prospect, I think he's good. He's a pretty good flyweight prospect on the come up. I'm looking forward to that. All right. I think, here we go. I think this is the last bit I'm talking about here. Callum Walsh is back, taking on Elias Espadas, who, came up very short against Xander Zayas, but since then is coming off of a very interesting draw against Sadruddin Akhmedov, in which he arguably could have even won that fight. But Callum Walsh, I think, is firing on too many cylinders. I'm not going to get to the whole diatribe. Yeah, he's a Tom Loeffler fighter. He's on UFC Fight Pass, TKO Boxing, blah, 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 blah. I mean, I could say it a million times. But just for the sake of getting through with this and talking about the fight itself, give me Callum Walsh by knockout in the 9th round. I think he's entering his real prime. He's on a great run of highlight reel knockouts. And even though Espadas is durable, I've seen him get stopped before, especially to the body. Callum Walsh is pretty good about hitting downstairs. I think it'll be a knockout. There's some other Tom Loeffler prospects on this undercard. Kane Sandoval taking on less than stellar opposition. I expect him to win inside 3 rounds. And this is an interesting fight. This caught my attention. Umar Jambekov is taking on Romer Alexis Angulo, who's still fighting apparently at 28-3. Of course, the only man to ever stop Alexis Angulo is David Benavidez. I don't think that Jambekov is quite on that level, so I'm going to back him to win by close but clear competitive decision. So, all right, that's going to be everything. One weekend of not amazing boxing into what I think will be a very high quality, low output weekend of boxing upcoming for everyone here. So thank you all for watching. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you all next week. Bye.